Welcome to another episode of Read All About It. I'm your host, Reed. Today I wanted to do a little recap of a match I just RO'd, the Shootout at the Double R Ranch, which was a two-day NRL Hunter match in Sparta, Wisconsin. It was a great match. We ultimately ended up shooting all the competitors through on one day instead of two. Due to the weather forecast that was supposed to come through, being Wisconsin in mid-March. You're taking a risk. It could be 70 and sunny just as well as it could be 20 and snowy. The first day was mid-50s and sunny, and the second day was drizzly and mid-30s and windy and crappy. And so I think all the competitors as well as the ROs were happy that we elected to get it all shot in one day, even though it meant for a long day on the range. But what I wanted to recap specifically about the match was the stage that I RO'd and what I witnessed and what I saw from a lot of competitors and how they tackled the stage. And after seeing it done 1,000 different ways, some takeaways and some things to do right out of the gate that would have helped a lot of these people. So I'm going to kind of draw out what the layout of the stage was and kind of talk through that. So it was a two-position left to right stage. So two positions, two targets, left to right. We were on a ridge top. There was a valley down below. And then there was, the first target was low left. The second target was high right. So there was a huge contrast in your field of view as to where those two targets were located. But the nuance that came with it was more in the way the stage was laid out on the ground, as there wasn't a definitive sighting pin in the ground. Rather, there was two trees with ribbons tied around them. So that creates some ambiguity in where one should glass from. And if you take note of the terrain, the ground features, the trees themselves, you can get a better idea of the best way to approach the stage. So this stage in particular, we were on a declining slope that was maybe, 15 degrees downward. Then up here there was some deadfall logs stacked up. And directly in front of that is where you would enter the stage, coming down a kind of a clear cut where some machinery had come through the timber. And then here, that's the ribbon around the tree and the first shooting position in the tree. Okay. What a lot of competitors did was stopped right here next to that tree and started to deploy their things, start to try to find and acquire the targets. There was a smaller tree off to the right here and a smaller tree off to the left. Our two sighting stakes were approximately there, and the forward shooting position was here. And this tree on the top was about 1 foot in diameter, and it leaned away from the hill. Not as drastically as I have pictured here, but it did lean away from the hill. There was also roots from the tree on the top side there, and there was another log right there on the left-hand side. And then on the left-hand side too, there was also a mound of dirt from where I believe it was a bulldozer that came through and piled up some deadfall and things like that. But so a lot of competitors stopped right here, and so target 1 was down here and target 2 was up there, low left and high right. What would happen is if you were up here, this tree was obscuring about 20% of the left-hand usable field of view, which was, depending on how high or low you were, was where target number 1 was. You did have clear line of sight to target number 2 from that position, but albeit it was through some small wispy branches and things like that, but you could still see target number 2. So what I told people after the stage was over was I recommended to them, come down here, come in front of that tree. Okay, there's nothing in the rules that says, for your shooting position, you cannot be in front of it. You absolutely can. You just have to be within a general bubble of it where you can reach an appendage out to it. So if it's advantageous where your stage is laid out, where behind the stake is sloping away and just in front of the stake is nice and level, prone out in front of the stake. Same thing goes here. If you set up your tripod down here below the tree and you're here, your back is essentially touching that ribbon on the tree from a collapsed kneeling off of your tripod. Not only that, but the field of view was wide open then. So setting up in front of that tree was the ideal location. You had a direct line. If you crouch down and were in a collapsed kneeling position on your tripod, your eye was naturally drawn just by the way the holes and gaps and things were in the trees down to that low left position. And as well, there was a good sized hole in all the limb cover that drew your eye naturally to that second position. We only had 3 cleans on the stage throughout the entire day from 3 competitors. The vast majority of them only found one of the 2 targets. If they found the high one, they really struggled to find the low one, and vice versa. Part of that's just due to the large contrast in the shooting field there from high or low left and high right. Part of it was too, they were obscuring their view of that low left target because there was some natural trees even further downrange that would obscure it if you were too high or left or right. So that ambiguity in that initial sighting pin, everybody shot it the same, so you can't really complain too much. Maybe it is a stage design flaw, but given the weather conditions and the terrain, it was a sloppy mud hole of a mess. A sighting pin wasn't going to stay in the ground anyway. Once people started walking through it, it would have just pulled out and gotten buried in mud and everything else. So those ribbons were essentially the only easy way to solve that issue without, carrying in a bunch of mulch or something like that to create a nice dry workspace for everybody. But if when you're going up to a stage like that and you see, you're shooting in timber and things like that, those are going to be obstacles that you have to navigate around. And that's where, that sighting pin does become very important if you're in timber. If there is a definitive one in the ground, I would set up directly over that to ensure that I am in the right location, because if you move a foot left or a foot right, that drastically changes where those trees fall in your field of view, and they may be lined up directly over top of that placard or directly over top of that target, so that you can no longer see it. And so any competitor, because several competitors asked about what the sighting pin or shooting locations were denoted as, and I told them that they were in fact ribbons around a tree, not a sighting pin in the ground, and that with that, it depended on what side of the tree, front, back, left, or right, where all the targets would become visible, and that things would come in and out of view as you move around the tree. I gave that instruction to anyone who asked about the sighting pin, but there were plenty of competitors who solved the puzzle from both on top of the tree and below the tree, at least at finding the targets. Not only that, but when it came to shooting up here, we had all these sawed down logs and everything behind the tree, so there wasn't a ton of space there. I mean, there was enough to get your tripod deployed and things like that. Not only that, but where this sighting or where this ribbon was on the tree, it was 3 feet. If you were directly behind the tree and you were standing up, I mean, it was a full arm's extension to touch that ribbon from on top of the tree. To me, that would be a hint that maybe I should get closer to that ribbon somehow. So moving in front of that tree brought that actual ribbon much closer to the individual, given that it sloped away with the sloping away ground. And even some of the most seasoned competitors, Matt Allwine didn't clean our stage. He did find all the targets, should have cleaned the stage, but he ultimately hit a limb on the near target that was only 130 yards. So given his angle and the height of his triple pole and rear tripod setup, he was just right at the optimal height to hit that kind of overhanging branch, and so he hit that and yielded a 7 on the stage. So target 1 was 130 yards, target 2 was about 320. Neither of them that difficult of a shot given the size of the target. They were those shrunken down buffalo, which is maybe 12 inches across and maybe 6 inches tall. But those were the targets. But like I said, there was only 3 cleans on our stage. Part of that was due to difficulty finding it. Some competitors, like skills guys, I would start, and if they didn't want to know where the target was from the get-go, the only hint I would have them start as was starting in front of this tree for their initial position. All those skills guys, if I remember correctly, ultimately found the targets with very little coaching. I did, occasionally say, what come out of your glass and where's your eye naturally drawn to? And they would look around for a second and they would see this hole in the tree. They'd pick up their binoculars and be staring right at the target. So little things like that, noticing those types of things as you're walking up to the first shooting position, and then not fighting natural terrain obstacles that are in your way. I watch people time out trying to get their tripod to hug around that tree just right, and this, that, and the other. It's like, all you need to do is be able to touch it. So even if you're only shooting at one target, you can set up in a prime shooting position and just be within an arm's reach of that shooting position, or a toe tap, whatever it is, and still be within the rules. if an RO just asks you to touch the shooting position, just reach out and touch it. If you can't touch it, pick up your stuff and move a little bit closer. There was only a couple guys that I had to do that to. Some of them were within reach already. Others had to move a little bit. And then another hiccup that got several people was, so this right sighting pin was an orange like driveway marker flag. The left was a blue one. And then this was an orange ribbon around a skinny tree. Several people stopped scanning at this forward shooting position rather than at the right limit marker. So just making note that typically those limit markers don't change throughout a course of fire. So to go from the blue to a ribbon around the tree, especially when we told you that it was ribbons around the tree for shooting positions. So they never even got far enough right to even find that second target, even if they were in the proper position. So that did catch up a few people. But all in all, it was a fun stage. I like ROing a more challenging stage like that because it helps me as a competitor as well to see some ingenuity and the clever ways that people solve things and how they go about it, what works really well for one competitor, things like that. But definitively, everyone who set up in front of that tree, I believe, found both targets. Just like I mentioned, the way it was just naturally set out, and it also made your shooting way easier because you didn't have this giant tree, that you were trying to navigate around, and all the roots in the ground and the uneven ground and all of those things. So that's my little takeaway from the match. Shout out to Reed and Andy. They did put on a hell of a match. It was great. All the competitors were great, and everybody did well. The other caveat I will talk about on a safety front is it was muddy as hell on that slope, and I don't think enough of us shoot enough to go bag on tripod as much as I saw. There were too many instances of people's tripods, people's feet, their rifles, all this stuff trying to slide down that hill to not be clipped into the tripod. We had 2 rifles fall off their tripod. The shooters still had positive control of their rifles. The muzzle hit the mud, so we had to stop them. They never lost control. They never broke the 180. Their bag just slipped off the top of their tripod while they were trying to adjust something. Still had positive control of the rifle with one hand, but when that slid off, didn't have enough forearm strength to hold up a 16-pound rifle, and the muzzle ultimately hit the dirt. So we had to stop them, clear those muzzle devices and everything of any obstruction, and then we restarted them from that stoppage. So I would just advocate from a safety standpoint, and I think you shoot better off of a tripod if you're clipped in. If that means investing in a better ball head that you know how to operate and that works better for you, by all means do it. If that's a really right stuff Anvil 30, I have a video on my channel that you should look at if you have a traditional 3-knob ball head, because with that, if you set that up correctly, that'll hold the rifle in whatever position you let go of it at, but it still has enough movement that you can pan, you can change elevation, you can cant the rifle as needed so that you can effectively shoot. off of that bipod without unlocking, or tripod without unlocking the ball head constantly and having to input minute torque into the system and things like that to get you on target, versus that ball head moving to the appropriate location and then stopping. So that's the other takeaway, for safety's sake and for the conditions. Not only that, and then moving to a forward position, watching so many people drop their bag in the mud as they try to pick up their whole system and walk forward to the forward shooting position, to shoot off tripod and off of the bag on top, where they could just be clipped in, pick up the whole system, the tripod's attached, move forward your 4 steps, set it down, and go to work. So I would be a strong advocate of more shooters electing to clip in, especially in those more slippery instances. So with that, I'll sign off. I hope my chicken scratches made sense. If you guys have any other questions, that was stage, 14 on that match. It was all the way at the end. If you shot it, you know which one I'm talking about. Next up, we've got the Caldwell Little Hunt on the Prairie in Decorah coming up in a couple weeks. I'll probably do a recap of the stage that I RO there as well. But I hope this helps some new shooters and seasoned shooters. Look at the ground, see where it's disturbed, so you can see what other people have been doing, and then take note of the natural terrain and the obstacles and try to find open areas to work from. So with that, I'll sign off, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.